Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Once again, this is Dave Nadler at the National Weather Service here in Peachtree City, Atlanta. We are talking about the impending winter storm expected to affect the area beginning tomorrow. This is a special weather briefing conducted this afternoon, 12:30 Thursday, January 9th, 2025. All right, still a very fluid situation. A lot of moving parts, but one thing, our confidence is increasing, and it's pretty high at this point that a major winter storm is expected to impact at least a portion of our area beginning tomorrow. We're looking at a relatively long duration, 12 to 18 hours of wintry precipitation over parts of a lot of North Georgia, at least, and maybe parts of Central Georgia. Snow and sleet at the onset, developing as early as between 4 and 9 o'clock in the morning tomorrow. We are concerned about the increasing freezing rain or ice accumulation potential across a portion of North Georgia, which includes the metro Atlanta area. We'll talk about that here in just a minute. And I do want to mention that there's still quite a bit of uncertainty with respect to how far north some warmer air begins to surge with this system. Models are all over the place. We're giving you our best guess, of course, at this point. But this could drastically affect the type of precipitation that we see and any accumulations, of course. So please keep that in mind, that we're confident in what we're putting out there right now, but things can and will change over the next 24 hours or so. One thing to note, we were down into the teens and lower 20s this morning, and we're going to get cold again tonight. Not as cold tonight with increasing cloud cover, but because we already have the cold air in place out ahead of the system, we do anticipate that any accumulating ice and or snow at the onset tomorrow morning will be felt immediately. So that's something to consider. It's not going to be like warm and then it melts for a while and then it freezes. It's going to be accumulating pretty quickly, especially on roadways that are not treated, bridges and overpasses, places like that. Some of the bigger changes since yesterday, we do have less snowfall expected across parts of North Georgia, but this is due to potentially more sleet and or freezing rain, ice accumulation that could occur across parts of North Georgia during the day tomorrow into tomorrow night. Okay, so here's the latest headlines. And I know it hasn't changed a whole lot from yesterday. I will say that by this afternoon, this will change. We will be upgrading this watch to not all the counties will be under a winter storm warning necessarily, but most of the area will likely be under some sort of winter storm warning or a winter weather advisory by this afternoon. Now, south of where the current existing watch exists across our area, we could be adding a couple of rows of counties into a winter weather advisory, and that could go out as far south as Columbus down to Macon. So for those of you down in that area, please keep that in mind, that even though you're not under anything right now, you still might go under a winter weather advisory for a period of time tomorrow when we think the worst of the impacts would be down there. Okay, we wanted to draw kind of an impacts slide that would just break down some of the higher impacts across the area. And we do, obviously, anywhere within the winter storm watch at this point, moderate to high impacts. The higher impacts will be across far North Georgia, where we expect more snow and or sleet with the gusty winds that could be developing late Friday into Friday night and Saturday. Moderate impacts for sure across metro Atlanta, but we drew like a little black oval area, kind of in this classic wedge zone where we could potentially see a longer duration period of freezing rain. So any snow and sleet that we see initially that transitions over to freezing rain, the uncertainty with how long that's going to continue or last and how much ice we could see in that area that I circled could increase the impacts quite a bit. And right now, we're not 100% confident on whether or not that's going to happen. Farther south across, central Georgia and our southern counties, lesser impacts, but still anywhere from Columbus to Macon to Sandersville, and even a little bit south of that. During the morning hours tomorrow, at the beginning of the system or of the storm, we could see a mix of snow, sleet, or even freezing rain that could create some minor problems across the area. So down there in the yellow. So keep that in mind. And then there's a small portion of our area where we don't really expect impacts to be that great, mainly just a rain event for the most part. Here's our latest snow accumulations. That's from this morning. This will be updated by this afternoon, but this is what we have right now. Basically, from Atlanta north, we've got anywhere from around an inch to upwards of 3 to 4 inches in the northern mountains. Some of this could fall in the form of sleet. It's not freezing rain or ice. This is just snow and or sleet accumulations at this point. Like we talked about yesterday, we do have what's called like a reasonable worst case probability of seeing a certain amount of snowfall. So the graphic that you see on the left is kind of like, there's a 1 in 10 chance or a 10% chance of seeing this much or more based off of some of the ensemble models that are pulled into our forecast prediction. And then the image on the right, which is pretty, negligible for parts of Atlanta, let's say, along the I-85 corridor and I-20, it's the lesser amounts in those models as well. So there's certainly a chance that we might not see any measurable snow in Atlanta, but we're going with at least, around an inch or so of snow or sleet accumulations before things transition to freezing rain across Atlanta. Probabilities of seeing at least 1 inch or more snow, you can see trending like lower to high north of I-20. Same thing with the graphic on the right that shows greater than 2 inches of snow. Again, pretty high across the northern third of our area. Higher elevations, mountains, where the colder air will be a little bit deeper, is where we think the snow is going to be a little bit longer lasting during the day tomorrow, where the accumulations could start to pile up a little bit. Now let's talk about ice. This is the real tricky part. This is what we have, anywhere from 1/10 to 1/4 of an inch across a pretty wide swath of north and even parts of central Georgia. Along in north of I-20 and the I-85 corridor is where we're expecting the most of these ice accumulations at this time. I will note that in that purple oval area that we are looking at, some of the newer data that we're looking at is suggesting that we could see, again, a longer period of freezing rain once it transitions from that snow sleet mix in the morning. And that's where we could see locally up to 1/4, maybe even up to 1/3 or 1/2 an inch of ice accumulation. And that's on top of whatever snow or sleet we see during the morning. So again, there's a lot of uncertainty with this, if the warm nose is going to be deep enough that it changes a lot of this to rain for a period of time late in the day tomorrow. But our confidence is higher that it's going to stay frozen precipitation through the day tomorrow across these areas that you're seeing right here, especially north of I-20 and north and west of I-85 at this point. Like the snow, we're showing probability of seeing at least 1/10 of an inch of ice accumulation is pretty decent across a good portion of the area. And then even though with that graphic to the right, this is for more than 1/4 of an inch, the numbers are really low. This will change a little bit. We feel like it'll be a little bit higher with our afternoon updates. So I guess the main thing to kind of take away from this graphic to the right is if you're anywhere in that lighter pink area, which includes Atlanta Metro, to the east along I-20, to the north, Athens up to Gainesville, don't let your guard down that we could see a more significant amount of ice accumulation with the system as we go through the day tomorrow and into tomorrow night. Here's the weather conditions now, going kind of slicing it 6 a.m. to noonish tomorrow at the onset. Mostly a snow sleet situation with anywhere like down from like south of Griffin, Thomaston, Macon. Those areas may see a little bit lighter precip, where the heavier snow or sleet could be more to the north as things unfold during the day or during the morning hours tomorrow. Now, around noonish into the afternoon hours, we do expect the warmer air to transition a lot of that snow, sleet, and even freezing rain to mainly rain across parts of central Georgia. But still, north of LaGrange, Griffin, Eatonton area, we do think there's going to be a mix of sleet to freezing rain for the most part. And then farther north, as you go up into like the higher elevations of North Georgia, we think it's going to be mainly snow and sleet, maybe some freezing rain mixed in as well. Across portions of far north Georgia. Now, as we go past sunset tomorrow night, precipitation will start to be kind of ending from west to east, but we do think there could continue to be predominantly freezing rain across much of metro Atlanta, a little bit farther to the north along I-85, 985 through Gainesville, and then across portions of far northeast Georgia, it still may be like a snow sleet mix. And then farther south of I-20 and the 285 loop. That's where things could be challenging with respect to, is it going to transition more to rain with temperatures around 33, 34, or will it be 31, 32, and then the rain's going to be freezing on contact? So that's going to be anywhere 20, 30 miles north or south of I-20, or west east of I-85 down to like Noonan. That's going to be the area of concern that we're really like challenged with at this point, to try to figure out. But I would definitely err on the side of caution that this can turn into more, definitely more of an ice event throughout the afternoon and evening hours tomorrow. And then after midnight, precipitation does end sort of southwest to northeast, which is good news. On the backside of the low and the colder air, we actually could see some scattered snow showers develop across northwest and west central Georgia. Don't think it really will amount to too much, but we could see a dusting to maybe a half an inch of additional snow accumulation in that area that we sort of circled white, going after midnight into the early morning hours on Saturday. So with that, I'm actually going to turn it over to Keith, and he's going to talk a little bit about a couple of the model simulations. So here you go, Keith.
Okay. Hey, good morning, everyone. Afternoon, actually. So we have a bunch of folks looking at different things, and I took a deep dive into some of the different model in the various scenarios. The one you're looking at now, it's a model that starts around 3 a.m. Friday and then goes 1 hour through 1 a.m. Saturday. And it actually closely represents our thinking in that if you watch here in the very beginning of this loop, it shows snow initially moving in, even places far south outside of the warning, we could see some snow or sleet at the onset before it starts to really lift north, and we see that transition to sleet, freezing rain through the afternoon. And then you see it really confined toward the end of the loop to far northeast Georgia, the classic what we call wedge zone, where it ends up being freezing rain to finish it. And so we think that's a reasonable scenario. The one thing I want to point out with this is that it holds on to snow a little bit longer in North Georgia. So we could see a little bit more on the accumulation side in far North Georgia, say the three counties, row of counties closest to the Tennessee line. One thing that's consistent in everything, it's still consistent with an early Friday morning onset, 4 to 10 a.m. Temperatures are expected to be below freezing. Dave went through or is going to go through the temperatures, upper 20s to around 30 at the onset. The combination of the early onset plus cold temps, this model shows it, all of them show it. We expect travel impacts to evolve rather quickly with that precip onset. One thing we took a look at today is how cold the ground is going into it. And the 4-inch soil temps from the UGA network are actually measuring 34 to 36 degrees, and that's actually pretty cold. So because of those factors, we would expect things to freeze relatively quickly after onset. So let me switch to Model B. We'll call it Model B. Again, showing a snow sleet onset, same time frame, 3 a.m., starts at 3 a.m., goes through 1 a.m. Saturday. However, this scenario shows more ice, more warm air leaking all the way up into far north Georgia, and we end up with a larger footprint of freezing rain. So in this scenario, we could call it more of a worst case scenario because it ends up accumulating more freezing rain through the day when we would have seen snow or sleet in the other scenario. So we want to point that out because Dave talked about both scenarios on the table. Certainly both are on the table, and we could see obviously more freezing rain in this, but just wanted to point those two out. Let's see, let me go to the next slide. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but this basically shows, again, in a table form. I'm not going to go through each of the cities, but you can pick out your city. You can pick out what we currently have in the grids with whether it's snow, freezing rain, mix. Look at the table at the bottom. It kind of shows both intensity and the type, but point of this slide is we have a lot of light snow and or sleet starting in that 3 to 6 to 9 a.m. window, and then transitioning to various forms of mixes through the day. We don't necessarily have an all freezing rain scenario. However, again, I mentioned on that last slide, it is possible that where you see some of these darker oranges in the afternoon hours for a lot of sites, that could become more of a dominant on the freezing rain side. But most of it ending by around midnight tomorrow night, Friday night. All right, I'll turn it back over to Dave and he'll cover temps.
Thanks, Keith. All right, folks, we'll getting towards the end here, but did want to mention the cold, what the temperatures are going to look like. Heading into tomorrow morning, we expect temperatures to be generally in the upper 20s to lower 30s for most of the area. You can see much of the area is going to be at or below freezing as we start to see some of that lighter precip move in from the west. As we go through the day into the early afternoon hours, we don't fluctuate a whole lot. Still, like around Atlanta, still expecting around 30, 31, which is definitely cold enough to support some sort of wintry precip, whether it's snow, sleet, turning over to freezing rain. It's still, going to be cold enough to support not only that type of wintry precip, but also accumulations as well. Going into Friday evening, they don't fluctuate a whole lot. We warm up a little bit, but we're going to be sitting right around that, that mark 32 degrees for a good chunk of the area. And that's certainly going to be dependent on what kind of precip we see. So if we jump up to 33, 34, that rain that might be falling might not be freezing on contact, which is certainly good. But if you're sitting at about 30, 31 and we're getting rain, then it's going to be freezing rain, and there's going to be ice accumulations with that. So we're really going to, have to be monitoring and, keeping an eye on these temperatures, certainly as the event unfolds throughout the day tomorrow and into the evening hours. By Saturday morning, we cool off just a little bit. Again, there's not a whole lot of change in the temperatures. And then by Saturday afternoon, we may start to see temperatures warm up from the southeast into the lower to mid 30s. And again, precip will be over with by then. So hopefully it'll probably be cloudy, but if we see some breaks in the sun, whatever snow, ice, or whatever is on the ground could start to melt just a little bit. But then we're dealing with the impacts of refreezing, certainly Saturday night and the Sunday as we fall below freezing again. The other thing with the winds, we again are expecting some gusty winds to develop out ahead of the system and then on the backside of the system, and this could enhance the risk of down trees and power lines, especially if there's any heavier snow or ice that accumulates on top of these features. So by Saturday night and the Sunday, the wind should die down enough where it wouldn't be so much of a concern. But there is going to be a period of time where we're going to be worried about some of the gustier winds causing, an enhanced risk of down trees and power lines. Kind of wanted to show you like this kind of double wave of higher winds, one later in the afternoon tomorrow into the evening hours out ahead of the system, and then on the backside of the system as the front moves through. The winds shift around to the northwest and the winds gust into the 20 to 25 or 30 mile per hour range at times. So there's a list of cities breaking it down by every 3 hours of what the winds are going to do, and then they start to die off Saturday evening after 6 o'clock tomorrow night. I should say Saturday night. All right, here's the summary, folks. Again, we do have high confidence that we're going to see a major winter storm somewhere in the area. We do expect a relatively long duration period of wintry precip. I think the challenges that we've talked about are how far north some of that warmer air surges with the system that could affect the type of precipitation that we get from maybe rain to freezing rain or vice versa. And then, of course, the potential to see any significant ice accumulations in that area of concern along I-20, I-85. With the cold air already in place, as precipitation moves in early tomorrow morning, we think any snow or ice will accumulate pretty quickly. And so the impacts on roads and elsewhere will be felt immediately. With that, we're not planning any additional webinars. But we will certainly be updating everybody through our emails. We'll be in chat. Certainly you can call us on the phone, and we'll try to, any pertinent updates that we feel we need to share with you all, whether it's in Slack or through email. We will definitely do that over the next 12 hours or so as things continue to hopefully come more in line before everything comes together tomorrow morning.